Well, thanks, Jenny. And Jenny sits in between the two worlds now as well, right? So she's doing a PhD with us, and also Jenny running her own business. And I guess that's the purpose of what we're doing today. We pick a theme that we all care about, but the idea is to share experiences between research and practice. But you have loads of those presentations during the day, so I do a bit of a promotion, selling some stuff that we're doing at Durham and at the Durham Enterprise Center. So you're going to have to just bear with me because I'll take you through what we do and what we do, and what we're doing here. Right, so that's here. So it's a bit of, again, self-promotion, and a bit of the Durham Enterprise Center is sat over there, so you get to meet them as well. Oh, hello. What is that? So this is the center we set up no long ago. It's been in the making for a couple of years, but we set it up officially a year ago. And what we're trying to do as a research center is trying to do things slightly differently and work collaboratively as much as possible with practice, with practitioners, with the SMEs we all care about, and with entrepreneurs in the region as well. And all the projects you'll see, I'll take you through a few of the projects we're developing at the moment. They all sort of have the same aim, so see how can work collaboratively so that we can contribute to the region and the regional, so the SMEs in the region as well. So there will be a lot of opportunities. Part of this is a bit of selling the center, so there will be a lot of opportunities for collaboration in the future alongside what we're currently doing. So we try and work across public, private, and non-profit sectors. It's not just entrepreneurship like the usual for-profit, let's grow unicorns obsession. We're trying to sort of cover a range of organizations, and not just the very early startups, but down the line, sort of small business owners trying to sort of get the businesses off the ground as well. So we try and cover a range of things, right? So, and that's why it's called Durham Enterprise Center and not Entrepreneurship Center, because we have a much more inclusive approach to enterprise, and we're trying to make a difference through research, right? So that's the aim. I guess we all trying to do it. Even if you do heavy theoretical work, we're all trying to make a difference. We just do it in a way that makes sense to us, working collaboratively with practice. And that's what I was looking at you, Mark, because it's the Durham Enterprise Center is part of what we're trying to develop collaboratively inside Durham as part of the Durham Enterprise ecosystem, where we're trying to bring together the 4 different strands within Durham University. So one is research, the work we do, the Durham Enterprise Center. The second part of it is student enterprise, so it's Marek's work with the Radisson Venture Lab. The third bit is RIS, so it's Research and Innovation Services, more specifically Commercialization Office. So I don't know whether we have someone from RIS here. No. So we work very closely with Economic Development Aid Office within RIS and the Commercialization Office as well. So that's the spin outside of Durham University, and this is fairly new, and it's how we're trying to bring entrepreneurship, enterprise education together. So there's so many things happening at Durham University, but so far we haven't been able to bring everything together. We have a new champion for student enterprise, and she'll be leading or coordinating sort of efforts across the university, because entrepreneurship is not a business school thing. I always tell the same story that entrepreneurship has been hijacked by business schools, but not really, right? So when you start, if you're a designer, you're in music, or you're in art, or biosciences, and so on, you start businesses, right? That's what you do. It's more like a life project, and anyone can do it. So I guess, Marek, you, the Venture Lab, you see people from across, students from across the university starting businesses. So that means that enterprise education, entrepreneurship education should be present across the university, not just within the business school, right? So there's so many things we can do from the business school, but doesn't mean that it's exclusive to what business schools do, right? And what universities should be doing as well. So that's what we're trying to set up at the minute, and I think we're making good progress. So in that sense, hopefully, Durham University will be a place that if you're interested in enterprise, you'll come to us, and there will be several entry points, right? Depending on what you want to be doing in the future with Durham University as a whole. So what is it that we do at the Durham Enterprise Center? what we're hoping to achieve is quite a multidisciplinary team. It's really cool. So we have people from practice like Jenny, Sophie, that they sort of are in between the two worlds. And from a range of tackling a range of issues. So we have a Grant doing social class, cognition, interested in complex social problems, collaborations with between research and practice, communities of practice as well. So there's so much going on. There's a range of areas that we're covering. We went from 3 faculty members back in 2021. We're currently 26, so that's sort of a combining PhD students and DBAs and postdocs. So it's a really, really powerful team, and we're always proud to say that we are one of the largest in the country, and that's really cool, right? So when you have so many people with a similar sort of ambition, good things can happen. And we also sort of with an eye on issues that are critical. That might be like thorny challenges in society. So mental health is one of them. We do work in rehabilitation. We do work in, so we have a project after the prison as well, social enterprises, accountability. So there's a lot of areas that are kind of complicated, and we feel enterprise can do something about it. There's not that sort of a silver bullet kind of approach that entrepreneurship can do it all, but there's something there, right? And so if you sort of imagine 20% of the population is starting businesses at any one point in time. So it's a big chunk of people that might act in sort of in that direction, trying to solve challenges through enterprise. And here's a sort of an overview of the big projects, or funded projects we're currently running. So give you sort of some flavor. There's, again, so many other things happening at the Durham Enterprise Center. But just to give you an idea, so we're setting up a new initiative, trying to support policymaking in spaces. So very little attention paid to what policymakers and development agencies and business development support they're currently doing. And what we currently have is like a one-size-fits-all. So we assume that just by mimicking what happens in Silicon Valley, magic happens, and we know it doesn't really work that way. So we're trying to sort of help policymakers to develop more context-sensitive solutions, and through the development of artifacts, so things that policymakers can use in their sort of a daily practices. This is a really cool project, working collaboratively with Junction Point. Probably you know Kate Duffy. Rings a bell. Kate, yeah, we all know Kate. So working collaboratively with them, trying to develop training in collaboration, so like a level 2, level 3 training, so we can help people getting trained into social entrepreneurship so they can start businesses. Normally level 2, level 3, as we all know, is like career transition. So it's we feel that can contribute significantly to life of a lot of people. Then there's a David's not here, David Johnson. He's working, trying to sort of bring SMEs and the biotech sector together and see, well, how can we better collaborate with each other? So he's looking into contracts and all the issues with IP, so all the sort of complications in the process of science commercialization, but on the sort of a bio side of things. The Social Science Enterprise Lab, there are a few of you that they're currently working with us. We're trying to incubate solution-oriented social science projects from across Durham University. And our mental health program, so that's the MHE, Mental Health and Entrepreneurship. We're setting up several projects across the center, and hopefully we're going to end up collaborating with more. We're trying to tackle issues, right? That I'll mention a few of the issues that we're trying to address. And we know that mental health is a big problem generally. After COVID, I think we're all more aware that's a big issue. And it's, from what we know in research, that is much more significantly, so it's much more problematic in entrepreneurship. As you're starting a business, you tend to suffer more, right? And we really pay attention to those sort of things. Are you, any of you running their own business here? Am I okay to say that you're kind of struggling? Yeah. So yeah, there's kind of a projects we're running at the minute. I'll mention a few, and this is very kind of self-promotion a bit. But I think it's sort of what we're doing in the lab. It's part part of the presentations that you're going to be seeing today, a lot of them, they're part of what we're doing and we're trying to do within Durham Enterprise Center and also part of the Social Science Enterprise Lab. But what we're trying to do is trying to scale up the impact of social science research. Often research is very inward looking and we're trying to sort of open a space where we can do like outward looking research. Right? So we can collaborate with people, bring practitioners in, send our research out. So we can just constantly be in the constant state of flow where we can work collaboratively in trying to address problems, right? Problems that matter to people. And we realize that when you anchor your research in problems that are real, so that being sort of affecting people outside academia, it's cool. It's fascinating, it's energizing. You know, Rob, you're doing a lot of that work, sort of sitting in between research and academia, and then all of a sudden, sort of research and practice, and all of a sudden you have very sort of a cool, energized research project. So that's what we're trying to do, and help academics within Durham to take stuff out. I'm just going to go, well, Jenny's part of it. Jenny's part of the lab. Sani is over there. So it's a sort of a small team, but hopefully the team will grow in the future. We all try, we're sort of with a similar aim, so coming from different places, hoping to take research out. And here's the issue, right? So there's a lot of investment going into impact. So those of you in the university, we all know that how impact is relevant and how it might potentially bring money in, or we just get bonus points because we're doing cool stuff outside the university. And there's that expectation that we should be able to take stuff out, right? So commercialize the knowledge products we develop, but we normally get stuck in that process. And it's very, very complicated. It's complicated for STEM, which is normally where things happen, but it's much, much more complicated for us in the social sciences because we don't have IP. So we just have ideas, models, frameworks. They're called IP weak, right? So when you try and commercialize that, it's very, very, very challenging. Timing to market is different. So there's a big expectation that something cool will happen, but very rarely happens. So that's what we're trying to sort of figure out, trying to develop some sort of a social science R&D, social science product development, where we can ground sort of a research in that sort of a need and move to solutions that can help people. So if you imagine psychology, they do that. So when they develop scales, that the scales can be commercialized. The entire, positive psychology, you work with positive psychology as trends, so the entire sort of a field of positive psychology has led to really sort of interesting solutions that are being now used widely across the world. So there's that potential there, and if you kind of see across Durham, there's a lot of cool research happening. It's just a matter of taking it sort of one step further. Not going to take it, but that we do several things. We use several methods to do that. So if you imagine biomedical sciences, there's something called translational research, where they run clinical trials, and then they go all the way to population health, right? So we're trying to imagine that, how would that work in the world of social sciences? What is a clinical trial for us? As you're taking basic research, so what we do in the theoretical work of social sciences, and we're trying to turn that into something that is useful for people. So we're trying to sort of imagine how clinical trials would look like in the social science space. We do future-oriented research as well, so trying to imagine, which is something that is kind of a challenging. Think about the future for researchers, because we work with facts, and in the future, as there's something that it doesn't exist, is facts. So we're trying to imagine how that future could look like, and how can we move our research in that direction, right? But not in the sense that we're trying to predict, because we know that we're not very good at predicting. If you've seen economists on telly, they normally get it wrong. We're trying to sort of imagine, right, desire futures, and work with that energy as well. So we have a 10-month program where we put researchers and practitioners through the sort of a research incubation program, if you like, and hopefully that will lead to commercializable solutions. But at the same time, as we're going through the process is empowering itself, because the practitioners are part of the team, so they belong to a research team, and they'll get trained as a researcher as well, right? But in a way that makes sense and fits in what they're doing as practitioners in the work. We're hoping to create scalable solutions that are both actionable, so something that you can do with, and then publishable as well, because the academics care about publications, right? So our life pretty much depend on it. And we do translational social science, so we take products, scientific products or papers that exist already, and we're trying to sort of put them through a pipeline that will end up in translations, right? So things that you can use as artifacts. Let me show you an example. This is one of our PhD students, part of the entrepreneurship policy initiative. And I was running a project in Chile, and then trying to figure out how ecosystems work in rural areas. And funny enough, I got a call, that was like 2015, from Highland and Island Enterprise, the north of Scotland, right? And they were seeing that what we produce in the south of Chile made a lot of sense, much more sense that we were coming from London, right? As a kind of a prescription of how we should set up an ecosystem for sort of rural enterprises. So, well, there's something interesting there that we can take research sort of from the other side of the world and see how can that work here, because they're sort of seeing that resonates what's happening on the other side of the world. So we got into this sort of solution-oriented social science and try to develop, take the refit framework into the northeast of England. We got a funding from NICER up in Newcastle, and we set up a platform. We designed a platform, and now it's being pilot tested. So that policymakers or business development organizations, they can just answer a survey and they'll get information about the local area, and then they'll take you through a set of resources they can use to guide, inform this decision making. And then they can compare themselves to other sort of parts of the region, and hopefully as people are using the platform, they'll have more information to make better decisions, right? So it's a sort of and now we're going to put that up there so people can just go and use it for free. For now, I'll see how to make money out of it, right? But you get a sort of again, a lot of information about the kind of situation in the region. Because again, we work under the assumption that if we mimic Cambridge or Silicon Valley or Boston or whatever ecosystem we have in our minds, all of a sudden the Northeast will flourish. And I've seen in the Akeley Heads narrative a bit of that as well. There would be the Silicon Valley of the Northeast, and we know it's not going to happen. We know it's not going to work, right? Because things doesn't work that way. You don't have the conditions for that. So we're trying to sort of help people to make more context-sensitive decisions. And here's a few of the projects that we are incubating at the minute. So it's Carlene's who's going to talk about her contextual safeguarding projects. We're trying to sort of help Carlene's team in sociology to take some of the tools they've developed around contextual safeguarding into the market. Now we're working with James and Jace and Kat and sort of other people trying to support neurodivergent young adults and transition self-employment. Again, all solution-oriented social science, and there's people from psychology and education as well. There's a project that is coming out of that collaboration with Junction Point, is accountability in social enterprise. Any of you work in social enterprise world? KICS. So accountability, reporting, measurement is tricky. And it's very complicated. So we're trying to develop a platform that we can help social enterprises so they can enter the information around impact, and the software will produce a report, right, so they can just go and use it. Because it's very time consuming and it takes a lot of resources, right? So measurement and reporting, and normally social enterprises struggle to have the time, and they don't have the time to be able to produce those reports. So we're in that process. In that artifact, in the same way, it's similar what we're doing with the rural enterprise platform. These are pieces of knowledge in themselves, because it's an artifact that expresses knowledge, right? So it's, instead of just writing theory pieces, we're trying to sort of give knowledge a shape, a slightly different form. In this case, the form of an artifact. And this is a new one. We're just starting with the creative industries. So we published a report very recently trying to sort of address the challenges within the creative industries. One being careers. What is a job in the creative industries? Identity, especially in the Northeast. There's that sense of being a collective, but then when you ask what is a creative industry in the Northeast, despite all the investment and all that sort of being kind of a powerhouse in the UK, they just don't know. This is the who we are question hasn't been solved yet, so we're still going to figure out whether we can provide an answer and develop a solution for that. And the third one is value, because normally everything that we do is monetized. So we suppose that the more money you produce, the more valuable you are. In the creative industry, we know that that's sort of, it varies quite significantly. And a lot of the value that creative industry produce, nothing to do with money. So there's an understanding, a more sort of perhaps holistic understanding of value in the creative industry. So these are the challenges we're tackling at the minute. How am I on time?
You've got loads of time.
I have loads of time, so I can just keep rumbling, okay? All right. So these are sort of an idea of the projects we're trying to tackle. And again, they're all tackling challenges that are coming out of practice. So the creative industries is a sort of a workshop with 10 reps from across the creative industries, and that's a representation of their views, their worries, their challenges, right? So a job, careers, value and identity is something that they care about. The neurodiversity project that came out of a collaboration with the Mint Business Club, so Celebrate Difference, Lisa's here from the Mint Business Club, and they came to us with that problem, right? So apprenticeships don't work, neurodivergent young adults, they don't go into uni. Colleges, there's very little they can offer. They're normally in self-employment anyways, right? But there's nothing there to help them transition to self-employment, right? And they need the tools and the skills. The schools, they very rarely talk about self-employment. So there's a bit missing, and obviously in the market as well. So it's not just a solution for them, but something sort of missing in the market that we can go and develop. So they're all tackling challenges and things that are problematic for practitioners. So in that sense, we provide benefits, and that's again, although it's something that we're doing within the lab, it's how we do research in the center, where we're trying to offer not just support to social scientists and the 26 members of the research center, but we feel that we're adding value to practitioners as well, so stakeholders interested in coming into the social sciences and collaborate with very bright scientists. And we also offer, I think, is a language and a set of tools to the knowledge transfer infrastructure. So if you go and ask any TTOs, or the Technology Transfer Office or Knowledge Transfer Offices, they really, really struggle to get in touch with social scientists. And they have very, very good connections outside, but that link is largely missing. It's been fascinating, right, working with them, because we see them. It's difficult, yeah. It's very, very challenging because that infrastructure doesn't exist, and that's the issue, right? So we have very good sort of rules and procedures to deal with STEM spin-outs, but very, very rarely we have something in place to support social science spin-outs, right? So, but we are slowly giving them, and if they're the bridge between the two worlds, I think that the fact that they have tools and language, it helps quite a lot. So that takes us to one of the challenge that we're trying to address with one of the projects, which is the issue of mental health and enterprise. Which I guess, again, intuitively, we all know that it's an issue. Just don't know how serious that issue is, right? And what is the nature of the issue, and why it's so complicated. And enterprise, so business development, it's considered an extreme occupation. Right? An extreme in the sense that it gives you, from a sort of a well-being point of view, you have a lot of resources. So that sense of purpose, passion, what drives new business development. So if you think about all businesses that they're developed here, is largely an expression of who you are, right? So James, so Work Pirates is coming out of your sort of heart in a way, right? Passion and you get together with people, like-minded people, and you're trying to sort of do something that is a representation of who you are as an individual. So your values are there. So when you're creating something that it sort of mirrors who you are, a lot of you is in there, and that sort of gives you what we call well-being resources back. Right? So you have loads to work with, but at the same time, you get to experience the downside of it. With much more seriously in a way, because when you're being criticized, when your business is being criticized, it's you who's being criticized, right? When you get like negative Google reviews, I've seen entrepreneurs like suffering Workload, because there's no such thing as a work-life balance. Then you find yourself answering emails at 9 p.m. And that's absolutely fine. And sometimes you just want to do it, right? You want to sort of be there for your clients. So there's no stop for entrepreneurs. And we have that sort of a message, look after yourself and take time off. But then they feel guilty because they should be paying attention to their business and not their life. But then they need, so it's a tension between the upside and the downside of new business development. So that turns into what we call the extreme occupation. It's an excellent fit for a lot of people. So now that we're working in the Attention Disorders project, self-employment and new business development is the best fit by far. So research keeps telling us the same, that's the best work environment for a neurodivergent individual. But then they get to experience the downside of it, right? So it's really good when it comes to idea development, that diversity, but then they need to set objectives, and then when the struggle begins. Throughout the venture creation process, you get to see the ups and the downs of neurodivergence, right? And again, you get to experience it in both extremes. So that sort of turns it into a paradox. So it's cool, but not so cool. That's the that's the issue. And this is hopefully there's no one from business development agencies here, because the range of solutions we have available just don't work. And we've seen over and over again how they're missing the point. Because again, the advice is take time off when people cannot take time off, or because they don't want to take time off. They set up incubators, for example, and what we're seeing is actually the incubators are accelerating those problems. Like the ideas like fail fast. Well, failure is a complicated thing, right? So you don't have to treat it so lightly. And that you're supposed to grow, that you're supposed to go for investment. Sometimes people just don't want to do that, right? So if something research is telling us is that although there's loads of support available, the support available is exacerbating the problems instead of solving the problems. Because it's part of the rationale also is we have to de-risk new business development. It's so risky, so uncertain that we need to de-risk it somehow. We provide funding, we provide support, and there's the incubators, accelerators. So it's all to do with reducing risk. The problem is that by reducing risk, we can create the false impression that this is easy, when in reality it's not. You see failure rate is not easy, and you guys know that it's not easy. So that's the issue, right? So there's a very thin line between de-risking the situation and creating sort of an impression that this is there's less risk involved, when the reality is that there's a lot of risk involved. So we kind of a complicated situation because we need that support, but the source of support and how the support is frame-shaped is exacerbating the problems that we're seeing with the small business owners. So it's a tricky situation that we're dealing with. So it requires a big change in thinking on how we support, on how we do enterprise development, right? From the point of view of the entrepreneurs themselves, from the point of view of those supporting them. From our point of view in academia, I'm very sort of aware that we have a big shared responsibility because we try to promote perseverance and passion and a lot of nonsense in our students, right? And how they approach enterprise development in terms of, oh, they have to grow, or we put images, right, or what an entrepreneur looks like, and we use the Steve Jobs and Richard Bransons, and well, that's not entrepreneurship. That's an outlier. It's an exaggeration of life, because it takes a lot of disorders to get to that point, right? And that's not the life of aspiration of perhaps the vast majority of those that embark in new business development. So yesterday we were with the team working in the issue of mental health, and we ended up in the space of myths, facts, and fairy tales, right? Because there's so many of them in new business development, and again being perpetuated over time, and we created more and more and more problems. So not cool, not at all. Again, there's the problem of trade-offs, right? Because we are, again, exacerbating problems. People know that they have to take time off, and then we all see it as a trade-off, right? So I look after myself, look after my business, and there's never a middle point, right? Where we say, okay, can I do both at the same time? So can I look after myself and look after my business? I don't feel guilty for just not paying enough attention to my business. So, and the issue is that everything that we know is not fully integrated into the support we offer. So you hear from Rob Edwards later today, and how they're integrating those very slowly into business support from the point of view of neurodiversity. Jay Smith, he'll be talking about also the same thing. So how can we bring mental health into business development as well? And so you hear from a lot of people, they're doing that. But again, so far we are kind of outliers, and we're trying to bring this into the mainstream. So one of the things later today from Jay Smith is something that we very rarely pay attention to, something called self-worth. Because when you go in and you're struggling as a business owner, and you go to anything like business development support agency or an incubator, they work at the level of self-confidence, right? So here's a bit of a marketing tools. This is how you deal with social media. Here's an accountant, right? So this is how you do forecasting. That increases your confidence in your skills, right? Although it's impossible, right? You have to do it all, and we know that entrepreneurs cannot do it all. So being good at marketing and accounting, this thing normally very difficult to reconcile. But nonetheless, you're supposed to do everything well. It's like academics, right? So we face the same. We're supposed to do admin, leadership, citizenship, teaching, research, impact, funding, and it's just not going to happen, right? Because they're very different things. The problem is that new business development, again, the business being a reflection of who individuals are, is largely a value-based endeavor. And when the business suffers at that level, the individual suffers at exactly the same level. So I'm not going to use the word that some of my friends were using, but you feel bad, you feel horrible, and they don't know why they feel that way, right? So when struggle hits your sense of value as a human being, like feeling less, right? I'm being criticized and I'm less, and I don't know why I feel that way. So it's not about self-worth. It's not about self-confidence. It's not about self-esteem, because that's the other thing. You're trying to sort of increase esteem, your sense of identity. I'm really good at this. I'm not that horrible. I can do marketing, I do social media. But that's esteem, and that's something that you can relatively easily deal with. In the same level, you can deal with self-confidence. What is much more complicated, and if we have psychologists in the room, is self-worth. It's deep ingrained in your life and your sense of sort of a purpose and who you are as a human being. So self-worth is how you evaluate yourself in areas that you care about. So you can come to me and you can criticize my football skills, right? Fair enough, I might not be good at it, but I don't really care, right? I might just try and increase my confidence and do a bit of go to the gym, and that'll increase my capacity, right, to perform well. But in an area that I don't care about. But if you come to me and say, well, you're a horrible researcher, well, that hurt me, and it'll hurt my sense of sort of a value as a human being. And that's what happens with new business owners. When they're being criticized, when the business is struggling, it hurts that sense of worth. And that's what makes it so complicated, and we're paying so little attention to that, and instead we're paying attention to workload and stress and anxiety. So it's sort of scratching the surface in terms of solutions. So that's what we did in a piece of research, trying to sort of figure out how to tackle issues of self-worth. Right? So how can we work at that level with individuals, and how can we align who they are and who the business is, right? In one sort of in a more holistic approach. But this is what happens when self-worth. Because we say, well, oh, cool, the risk is about sort of more like a therapy, counseling type of thing. Well, no, because the business suffers as a result of it. So we see people with deteriorated sense of worth, withdrawing. I remember one of the first conversations I had with Nicola at the Main Business Club, where they bring business owners together. The first sign of sort of a concern is when people don't show up. So we have training, and then all of a sudden they don't show up. That's the first and best sign, well, there's something wrong here, because they withdraw from social contact, when in reality what small business owners need is that sense of being part of Because it's a lonely journey, right? So you know, Jenny, it's a very, very lonely journey. As you bring them together, they all know they're going through the same, right? Social withdrawal, then it's one of the first problems. Self-view, so it affects how they see themselves as entrepreneurs and how they see themselves as human beings. I've seen situations where in just informal conversations say, well, you know what, I'm seeing that my family's sacrificing so much for my own sort of endeavor. I feel guilty, right? So the way they see themselves as part of being part of a family and the ability to provide and the ability to sort of keep an entire sort of a family together, that's sort of start deteriorating. And they might be making money, but the way they see themselves as being affected. Business performance is affected as well. Because they tend to they critically evaluate everything that they do, right? So you feel depressed, you have negative outlook, but you see yourself as in a negative way. I'm not that good, right? But again, not on the level of marketing or social media or accounting. I'm not that good as an individual because this is something I really, really care about. And you tend to avoid challenges, right? And this is about uncertainty and overcoming hurdles. You start sort of avoiding those challenges, and that's inherently part of new business development. So it affects everything, right? And if you think from the point of view of support organizations, well, that's the kind of things that we should pay attention to, because that's where that's sort of a critical to integrate success or continuity of the business, right? So instead of alongside marketing, social media, and so on, probably should pay attention to those sort of issues, right? So I'm not going to go into details because Jace will take you into the space of the world of self-worth with much more detail, and what is that they're doing about it. But essentially what we found, and this is again just to give you an overview of it, is mismatches between what they expect and what they get at the level of purpose and achievement and freedom. Because they get to turn purpose into their own decisions, the way they organize their businesses, and that leads to some sort of achievement in life. And what happens is that gets completely misaligned, right? They quit the jobs to start their own business, and then they start hating the businesses because they ended up doing exactly the same they were running away from. And making decisions that don't make any sense, right, based on the purpose they had. So for the reason they started the business in the first place. So there's a lot of things that start happening that sort of start creating incongruences in life. And we know, again, from psychology, there's nothing worse than having that sense of incongruence in life. This is how I would love to see myself, and this is how I'm seeing myself today. When they have nothing to do with it, it affects psychological functioning, and we know it affects business development as an effect. So it's kind of a complicated, and that triggers a sense of, affects a sense of worthiness, and that leads to stress, anxiety, and a sense of sort of being burnt out, and so on and so forth. So what we're seeing in that piece of research, that it's when we are blaming immediately workload and stress, and we're trying to address those issues, there's that element in between that is affected entrepreneurs, and that we're completely missing from the picture. That sort of a sense of incongruence in life, and that's sort of exacerbated by, so it's not the negative emotion themselves, it's more what happens at the level of values of the individual. So that's one of the projects we're trying to address, and this is something that Jace will present later on, so I'm not going to sort of spoil it, but it's an example of what we do in a Durham Enterprise Center, where it's not just about, again, the paper that we do publish, the papers, but it's also about finding solutions for those sort of issues. So there's an entire business created, an entire program created to support the business owners and the sense of worth. Right? I'm not going to take you to it. I'm not going to spoil it. Let's see. So this is part of I was invited to when Kim McGuinness was running for, not yet. So we were invited to present from Durham University, what is that we do in around enterprise. And I guess it's a message not just for her. I have to go back to, now that's been elected, have a new conversation. But I guess it's for everyone here. It's what can we do from academia, from the research we're trying to do, and how we can collaborate with, again, not just the new combined authority, but more broadly, reps from across the industries and especially SME owners. Because there's loads going on, right? So we know that there are new growth zones, new sort of a little tax havens for SMEs, and there's Akeley Heads coming up, and there's so many things. And the fact that we business school just across the river from here, it's all part of that new ecosystem that we're trying to create. But as we're imagining how that could look like, right, and that's a message for all of you, perhaps we can just rethink it. And I guess we can play a big role in that process, right? So I was trying to imagine County Durham in the Northeast. Well, you know what, we can play a role. Well, so we're not isolated in that building. We're working collaboratively, trying to imagine how that work for everyone could look like. So that's what we do at the Durham Enterprise Center. That's part of the sort of a project to give you hopefully some flavor of what the projects we're doing. And it's not that we have spaces, not opportunities, right? So if you're really interested in collaborating with academia, this is a place for you. And then we know my colleagues, so we have Martina here from the Leadership Center and interested in sort of EDI, how EDI works within Durham, although you're stepping down, I heard yesterday from your EDI role. But they do an amazing work as well, right? So the operation centers do an amazing work. So I guess I've seen Durham University, especially business school, changing somehow and trying to sort of embrace more and more what's happening in the region. So it's not isolated in that building over there, right? It's really part of what's going on in the region. So a lot of new spaces for collaboration, and everyone's welcome. Thank you.